I'm Greg Hunter. Welcome to USAWatchdog.com. With us a guest we haven't had on in a while. The last time we had him on, he said, listen, Trump is doing fantastic things. He's bringing back all this cash. He's repatriating cash. Any CEO that's not repatriating cash ought to be fired. The economy is going to take off. It's going to be doing very, very well. And guess what? That's exactly what happened. Donald Trump did get his tax ban through, and the economy did take off. But what is going on now? We have Martin Armstrong. Martin Armstrong, the expert in cycles and his economic confidence model, brilliant guy, goes all over the world. Martin Armstrong of Armstrong Economics, thank you for joining us today on USAWatchdog.com.
Well, thank you for inviting me.
Well, I know you have a paper coming out that's coming out in a couple of weeks, and I know you sell this to your subscribers, but you told me in the pre-interview to start with a preview of what you think is going to be going down in 2019. Martin Armstrong, what's going down in 2019? What are your predictions?
Well, largely, I mean, if you just really look at what's happened in Congress, I mean, it's gotten to the stage now that politics is so polarized that we're in perpetual gridlock. I mean, there's no chance of anything actually working. I mean, even you take the thing about Trump, with the wall. They go, oh, well, it's such a waste of money, $5.7 billion. Well, we spend $6.7 billion per week on interest, and nobody talks about that. I mean, within the whole scheme of the budget it's minuscule. It's not even 0.1. So this is really just politics. Whatever he happened to run for, they have to oppose. And sadly to say, this is not getting us anywhere because, I mean, the Democrats get back into power, and then what will happen? Then the Republicans would do the same thing to them. I mean, just look at the Kavanaugh hearings. They've really crossed the line there. And so what is the retaliation? Now you have the, Democrats in Virginia going through their high school yearbooks and saying, oh, they wore black faces or whatever. I mean, this is what happens. So honestly, people that I know that would be qualified to run, nobody's interested. I mean, you've crossed the line here. It's like, there's just no place to go.
So what is your predictions for the economy in 2019? Are we just going to skidding along? Is it going to crash? Is it going to go higher? What's going on?
The economy itself is beginning to shift. I mean, you had all these people coming out saying, oh, the stock market was going to crash and that was it. And it was all over with going there into December. And it went right down. At the last conference we did in Orlando, I said we should go down to test the monthly support number, which was 21,600. We stopped at 21,712. We've rallied all the way back up. What has this rally been about? It's been basically all the foreigners coming in and saying, thank you very much. This is a wonderful gift. The euro went down. So from their currency perspective, they made a fortune. And it's foreigners that are buying everything. You had, Schumer and Bernie talk about the repatriation. Oh, we ought to, stop this. They act as if the money just evaporates. If a company buys back its stock, the investors, they just take the cash and they go buy something else. I mean, you can't have major companies like this with excess cash that they can't really use. I mean, that brings down earnings, it brings down everything. So that's why they buy their stock back, basically to boost up the earnings relative to what's left.
You're saying in the pre-interview, you said that listen, the rest of the world's a basket case. Now you have a conference coming up in Rome in May. We'll talk about that at the end of the interview. But you have this world perspective. People hire you all over the world, in Asia, in Europe, in South America, all over the U.S. And you made the comment. The rest of the world is a basket case. Can you explain?
Well, you have the May elections coming up in Europe for Parliament, which is why we're also having our conference this year in Rome. You have major separatist movements. I mean, everywhere. I mean, people are fed up with the EU. It doesn't work. Southern Europe has gotten the short end of the stick on everything. and people don't quite understand what happened. Um, Europe, they want to preach that it's like one giant wonderful family. However, they view everybody else as like, oh well, the southern guys. It's kind of like the drunk brother-in-law. You have to put up with him at a wedding or a funeral, but you don't want to lend them any money, and that's basically it. The whole bail-in thing. How did that start? It started because basically you had banks in Southern Europe in trouble, and then you had Northern Europe saying, well, we're not going to send money to bail them out. So then this bail-in starts. It's just a complete nonsense. I mean, you have a single currency, but you don't have a single economy. And they never regarded basically everybody as one happy family. They've just used it as a means to oppress others. And this is what's going on with Italy. I mean, Italy is on the brink of also, exiting. I mean, they should. Joining the euro was the worst thing they ever did. I mean, you can imagine what happens. Your past debt was then converted to euro. And then the euro went from 80 cents to $1.60. So now you actually owe twice as much as what you did before. So at this stage in the game, it's just, this is why Southern Europe has been so depressed. I mean, you have unemployment running at 60% in some areas. I mean, it's a real basket case.
So investors see America as, well, not such a basket case.
Look, the U.S. economy has been the only thing holding up the world. And people don't realize what's the difference between U.S. versus the rest of the world. China respects it, and they're starting to move in the proper direction. Germany has had basically the old mercantile economic policy from the 1700s. Let's build stuff, sell it to somebody else, and then we make our money and bring it home. The statistics, even the EU statistics now show that Italians, as bad as it is, they, on a per capita basis, their net worth is more than Germans. Because Germany never focused on its domestic economy. It was always build something to sell to somebody else. The United States has the biggest consumer market, which is why everybody wants to sell here. China now realizes the mistake, and China is now turning inward, and it's going to try and develop its own consumer market. And so it doesn't need the United States. And this is how the real economy is built. And Europe is still too socialistic, and it's a mercantile model. It's you have all these people focused on trade, which is nonsense. I mean, trade is a minuscule part of world capital flows. Daily currency flows daily now is over $5 trillion. I mean, trade is minimal.
Do you think that the United States will keep chugging along? Is that your prediction then for 2019, that the U.S. will keep, bouncing along? It won't have a crash, may not vault higher, but it certainly won't have a crash, as everybody looks at America as the engine of the world. Am I getting that wrong?
Well, as far as the share market or something like that, no. I disagree with all those people that are saying, oh, it's going to crash and you got 40% off, etc. First of all, if we have a debt crisis, governments are in trouble. Why would you sell equities and then run the flight to quality to bonds? I mean, it makes no sense, particularly at these levels. So the only game in town is basically really equities for big money. I mean, sure, you have individuals can buy gold, etc. But I mean, gold is also a very small part of the world economy. So where's the big money going to go? I mean, in the bond markets, that dwarfs the equity markets by about 10 to 1. So it doesn't even take a lot of money, waking up and saying, let's get rid of these bonds and go into equities. So that's why the stock market keeps going up. And all these people have been calling a crash. Look, they've been calling this is the most hated bull market since the low of 2009. I mean, every rally, oh, that's it, it's going to crash, it's all over with. They've been saying it constantly. So that's why they were always wrong. When they flip and they start saying, "Oh, it's only going to go up," that's it. Now you know you're getting close to the high. But at this stage in the game, they just have been so far behind on everything. It's ridiculous.
What do you think about the Basel Agreement, where they made it in 2012? They're going to have gold, a tier one asset, 100% valued in April 1st, 2019, just what, a month away or so. What do you think about that? I mean, is that going to be positive for the gold market, or is it I mean, what do you think?
I mean, look, mainly what you have going on is that because Europe's a basket case, the likelihood of the euro is going to completely fall apart is actually quite high. And what did the euro do? It replaced basically 28 currencies. So the diversity has been shot. This is why the dollar has been going up, and you have central banks buying equities for the first time because there's no other place to put money. And the pessimism about Europe is pretty big. British market isn't big enough. Canada, Australia, China's not opened up yet. Japan's another basket case. It's just, I mean, they actually bragged that they bought 97% of their auction. That's showing there's no private bid for anything. So gold has been rallying with the stock market. And this is what I've said all along, that eventually towards the end, they have to align. Why? Because at that stage in the game, it's us against government. So tangible assets rise, and that's equities as well as gold. Even if you go back to gold going into 1980, I mean, the stock market bottomed. It fell about 50% into mid-70s, down to 570. And then what did it do? It rallied back to 1,000 going into 1980 following gold. They don't move opposite. I mean, that so many people preach. It's diversification is necessary, but you have a tremendous amount of people that are looking to get out of the bond market.
And so you think the full evaluation of as a tier one asset, you think that's positive for gold, basically, right? And silver, we say something about silver too.
It really depends. I mean, institutions can't really use it because they need performance. Sticking it in a vault is very nice, but they have to earn income from it. So if they lease it out, which a lot of people do, then they can earn some income from it. They can buy the gold stocks as long as you're getting income. They just can't have dead assets.
Do you think you're worried about all the debt in the world? I mean, we went from. I mean, Nomi Prinz wrote a book about all the her latest best-selling book, and she said in there, we went from about 160 some odd trillion in global debt to 250 trillion dollars now in global debt. I mean, we're up to our necks in debt, and some of this debt's never going to be paid off. What do you think about the leverage and the extreme debt in the world today?
Well, I mean, that's a real problem. We have close to, I mean, I would say you got about $2 trillion in corporate debt domestically in the U.S., which all expires by 2021. So you're just looking at as people begin to realize that the problem is in government, not in the private sector, then interest rates will start to rise. And that's what we're looking for pretty much going out of 2020. And you have all this crazy stuff going on in Congress. I mean, like I said, you have people that bash the central bank, et cetera. But I mean, they don't look at the fiscal side. And you have this new, modern monetary theory where they're saying, well, see, the central banks with quantitative easing, they printed a lot of money and it didn't create inflation. So we can just spend whatever we want. That's Bernie Sanders' idea. And they're starting to teach this in universities.
And that is patently stupid, is it not?
Yeah, I mean, it's the reason you've had the quantitative easing with no inflation is they don't look at the fiscal side. I mean, what have they done with taxes? They've been raising taxes everywhere. They've been going crazy, and enforcement is really off the charts. Um, I was in meetings in Brussels, and I just took the train over through the tunnel to London, and I still had a suit and tie on. Most everybody else was in their jeans and sneaks, and I'm the one pulled over. And the question is, how much money you got on you? I said, look, I'm an American. That still wasn't good enough because I could be an expat living in Britain, you see. So they wanted me to show my ticket. Where did I buy it? I said, here, I brought the ticket in Brussels. I returned to Brussels, and I'm going back to the States from Frankfurt. Then they finally let me go. But it's like, how much money do you have? Did you take any cash over there to hide it from us? I mean, this is what's going on.
I had this in my weekly news wrap up, and I just think this is so absurd. But this is just a little nib nod that you're talking about government's cuckoo. Illinois hopes to fix $134 billion pension shortfall by issuing more debt. I mean, is this the kind of crazy stuff you're talking about?
Yeah. There's just there's no end to it. They don't see the problem. And debt before 1971, before the floating exchange rate, if you had, e-bonds and you took them down to the bank, they were illegal to borrow against. That's when the theory it was cheaper basically to borrow rather than print. But since then, if you want to trade futures, what do? You can keep T-bills. All right. And so today, debt is cash that pays interest. That's it. It's completely flipped. They don't even understand it. So all these people talking about, quantitative easing with the bank, central banks, they're not paying attention that the debt that's being issued is collateral. It's just simply cash that pays interest. That's it.
You had a thing in your thing about AOC, Ocasio-Cortez, and you were talking about her Twitter followers. It's like 3 million, but Donald Trump has 55 or 6 million Twitter followers. And you talked about a fad versus the real thing. Would you please discuss, because you do, economic and you do geopolitical cycling, and this is part of the, I guess, geopolitical cycling. What's going on between Ocasio-Cortez and Donald Trump in the big picture?
Well, she has made the mistake with the Democrats and in failing to understand why she was even elected. She was just simply part of this, what is being called really the Trump revolution. And what it is mean by that, not something that he led, it's just that whoever's in power, throw them out. And you look around the world, it's the same thing. Now, the Democrats, what they did and what she has done, I won. I beat a career politician because they like what I have to say. And that's not true. I mean, Mitch McConnell is looking at putting her Green New Deal on the table, and watch how it gets absolutely crushed. I mean, it's absurd. I mean, all the corporations that donate money to the Democrats, they're going to be running in the opposite direction so fast you wouldn't believe it. I mean, she wants to end all air traffic. I'm
smiling in the background because it just, I'm not that smart, but it sounds stupid to me.
I know, it's just completely, off the charts. I mean, she has no idea what she's saying. And I mean, I had a friend of mine in London. We were going to a black tie dinner, and his girlfriend went out and she bought a sweater and paid $3,000 for it. 3,000 pounds, actually.
Wow.
And he thought, what are you doing? That's absolutely crazy. And she said, no, I saved you 6,000 because I was really wanted to buy something more expensive. And this is exactly what Ortiz has said. We're going to take the $3 billion that we saved by not giving them a tax write-off and put it into the community. But the $3 billion would have came from Amazon. It's not cash in the bank. I mean, it's like, excuse me, do you even understand that basic, math? It's just unbelievable.
So you think that she will turn into being a fad? I mean, even the founder of Starbucks, who who isn't for the stuff that she's talking about. He's a Democrat, and which they're scared to death that a lot of Democrats will go, yeah, that makes sense. I'll vote for Schultz or whatever it is he wants to run for president. The Democrats aren't that stupid.
Exactly. You have a lot of the conservative Democrats who are shaking their head. Then you have Elizabeth Warren talking about putting in a 3% wealth tax. If the market went down for 10 years, you still have to pay 3% of its value every year as you're losing money. But anybody that's attempted such a tax ends up broke after 10 years. That's it. They will consume all of your money. These two ideas are just so off the planet. It's like, people are not, they didn't vote for her and say, yeah, I want to pay more taxes. They just didn't. It's a real contrast. And she has more followers on her Twitter account than Pelosi or Schumer. So it is interesting.
But you think that's a fad?
Yeah, pretty much, because the whole socialistic system is failing. Now, I know people say, oh, no, it's capitalism, and they'll point to big companies and all this sort of stuff. That's really an oligarchy. All right. Capitalism is basically, bottom line, you have the freedom to do with what you earn yourself. It's the way the founding fathers created the country to start with. We had no direct taxation. It was all indirect. And what is the difference? You take Elizabeth Warren's 3%. She's, I'm only going to tax the rich. That's what they said with the income tax, too. Once it's in, then they can start changing it and bringing it down. But how do they know you're not rich? You still have to file a paper saying what your assets are to say, see, I am below your threshold, so I'm not rich. It imposes a duty upon you to comply. So they can't put you in jail for not paying your income tax. They put you in jail for failure to file your income tax. So that's the difference. It's under the way the real capitalistic system is not big corporations. That's an oligarchy. And the oligarchy we have is because of socialism. Once you have a republic, then what happens is one guy represents everybody in the city. And then somebody comes up and says, hey, I'll give you this, I'll give you that, and how about voting my way? And they do. A democracy in Athens, in Greece, the head of each household went up to vote. There was no representative, okay? But you also, women didn't need the right to vote if there was no law that could be directly imposed against them. They didn't have any kind of a personal income tax, that they didn't have these laws that say, oh, okay, abortion's outlawed, blah, blah, blah. Whatever laws they want to do is all under this pretense of socialism because they have the right and obligation to protect you. But then as soon as there was a case I just wrote about, because it was down in Florida where that guy ran in and killed a bunch of kids in a school. Then they filed suit against the police officers who were scared and didn't go in to save the students.
Yeah, Broward County.
The judge just ruled this Constitution is negative. It's not positive. So what does that really mean? It says, thou shalt not, write a law against religion. It's not giving you a right to freedom of religion. It's saying the government cannot make a law against religion. It's a restraint upon them. It's not your positive right. And it's negative versus positive. So when they went to say, well, the police didn't defend the kids, well, there is no obligation. They have to.
I know you do your cycle work, and I know you have. I've seen your cycles, and you have the markets going down into 2021. Is that right? Is that where the cycle's going in the next leg or two?
That's the economic business cycle. You also have to understand. You can see on our website we publish charts of GDP. Our GDP growth peaked in the 1970s. I mean, we have been in a steady bear market ever since. So, I mean, just look at it today. I mean, they like, the target. Oh, wow, we'll cheer for 3% growth. We had 8% growth before '07. Um, I mean, you can't even get back to those levels. The higher the taxes go, the less disposable income the average person has. And that's what you're seeing with this yellow vest movement. Um, you know, and government lies all the time. I mean, just look at what Macron did. He put in this tax, for the global warming to save the environment. And then they started protesting, said this is ridiculous. So he had to back off. But then what did he do? He says, oh, gee, we're going to have a hole in our budget, so we have to raise some other tax. So is it really taxes that you're after, or are you really trying to save the environment? And in Vancouver, they passed a surcharge for schools, but the money's thrown in the general budget. It doesn't go to the schools. So they can spend it on anything they want. But this is standard operational procedure. They'll call it something, it goes into the general pot, and they'll spend it on something else.
So are taxes going to drive the markets down eventually? Is that what your model is showing?
That's been basically it. I mean, taxes are going nowhere but up. I mean, Trump, was, from the model standpoint, is kind of like a reaction rally. I mean, the logic coming out of the Democrats is really befuddling. I mean, they're like, oh, well, he lowered these taxes on these corporations and they didn't have to pay as much, so they're bringing all their money back. Well, you would have gotten nothing if it stayed there. It's like, well, eventually they'll bring it back and we'll get our 40%. No, it won't. It's there. That's what happens.
You think he'll be reelected?
Bring it back, and you only have to pay 10% for bring it home now. And they did.
Smart move. Do you think he'll be reelected? The bookies out in Las Vegas are giving him the odds-on favorite for 2020. Is that what you're showing with your cycle work?
Our model is showing it. I haven't run it up to date, but it was basically showing still neck and neck.
Oh, really?
I mean, if people don't realize, I mean, if you look at, there's only 3 presidents that ever reached 60 to 62% of the popular vote, and that was FDR for the first election. That was LBJ after John F. Kennedy's assassination, and Richard Nixon to end the Vietnam War. Everybody else, I mean, they win by 52%, 53, 54. They stand up and pretend they have a mandate from the people. They do not. It's less than 10% of the people that really make the decision who's going to be president or not. I mean, you got 45% of the people that are Democrats, and they will vote for Democrats no matter what you show them, what evidence you put out there. They'll just deny it. And the same thing when you look at Republicans. 45%, that's it. So they've already made up their minds, and they're going to vote red or blue. That's it, period. So it's only 10% of the people that will listen to what the arguments are. And they really decide who is on top.
And so you're not forecasting, so 2019, no stock market crash in 2019. Would you own the stock market?
Yeah, I mean, look, we're still in a consolidation phase. If we continue to make new highs and we close, basically above the 26,000 level on the Dow right now, for the week of February 18th, then you can still push higher. I don't think you're going to run away. I mean, you just retest the highs, then you come back, consolidation, you're going to retest the lows. But basically, this is it. We're in a staging ground for this thing to take off. And as we approach the 2020 elections, our computer's projecting this is going to be the worst since the 1960s. Neither side's going to accept whoever wins. We're looking at a tremendous amount of violence. This approach that the Democrats have taken as far as oppose everything is serious because it's polarized the entire country. And you have, it doesn't gain anything. I mean, even if they won, then the Republicans do it to them. So all we do is we have gridlock for decades now.
Would you so you think that no matter what, and I heard somebody else say the same thing. You know, if Donald Trump can put another Supreme Court judge in for whoever and have a firm control, then we overturn Roe v. Wade. This preacher was saying that we could have civil war right then and there. Bam.
Oh yeah, I mean, that's true.
Explain that. So what are you saying in your models? You're saying violence. Explain what you're saying. Explain.
Like the '60s, violence at conventions and things of this nature. I mean, you have people running around shooting up cars because they have Trump stickers on them, and it's really real hatred is developed. It's incredible, but. I mean, before, look, if whoever you voted for, lost, you accepted it and you moved on. I mean, people don't accept it anymore. So it's just like, what is this stuff? Well, Trump's not my president. Well, then who is he? There is no president of the United States, or it's your way or no way. That's what you're really saying. I mean, it's hard to put this together. It's polarized the country so much that it's going to be permanent gridlock. Congress is out of control. Don't expect anything to help the economy coming out of there. All they're going to do is continually raise taxes, and that's going to be really disastrous. And I don't know could possibly come in here after Trump. I mean, despite the crazy things that he says on Twitter or whatever, he's got thick skin. I mean, it's going to take somebody with a suit of armor to be president anymore. I mean, all the criticism that they throw at them. Does somebody really emotionally want to step up to the plate and take that? I mean, it's just crazy. It's too far.
Would you be a holder of gold? Would you be with the extreme bond debt? Would you be a holder of gold and silver? Would you have some of that in your portfolio?
Well, yeah. I mean, the biggest problem with gold these days is that, look, 20 years ago you could put it in a suitcase, hop on a plane, and fly someplace. All right, you can't do that anymore. There was a guy that had 50,000 in cash that he saved up, and he was going home to Armenia to build a house. They confiscated it from him. I mean, this is what's going on. I mean, you have money that that's could have been from drugs, and they get to steal it. This is actually one of the final stages of how Rome fell, when there were the tax collectors basically just turned against the people, and that's what's going on. It's
So you would or would not have gold? Is it better to have it than not have it? I mean,
well, yeah, I mean, sure, but I mean, I would. Honestly, if you're looking at really having to use things to survive, I mean, you're probably better off with actually U.S. silver coins.
Okay.
Because at least the average person on the street would at least say, all right, fine, it's a quarter. Okay, 1964 or better, I know it's worth more. As opposed to a bar of gold or a bar of silver, they didn't, look, there are YouTube videos showing people offering a bar of silver versus chocolate, and they took the chocolate.
Yeah. I understand. And what about the bond market? We're looking like we're going to be in a rising interest rate environment or not? I mean, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, after 2021, I mean, it's crazy.
Rates are going up.
Yeah, I mean, what's happened with the quantitative easing? I just did a documentary in Europe. I mean, the ECB has destroyed the bond market. They buy all the auctions. Pension funds, they need, basically 8% to break, just to break even. That's why, a lot of people are like saying, oh, these, rich corporations and stuff. I mean, what's been going on? They've been, you have pension funds and big companies with cash. They've been buying farmland, and then they rent it out. Why? They get 5% yield.
Yeah. Okay.
What do they get in a bank? Nothing.
And what about your? I don't have you on very often, so I'm going to pepper you with a bunch of questions. What about the war cycle? I mean, I don't know. Is Venezuela and the stoppage of food going in there or supplies? Is that part of it? Is Russia threatening to point missiles at the United States if they put missiles in Europe? The Middle East, you have Israel and you have Iran also trading barbs about possibly going to war with each other. What about the war cycle that you document in your economic confidence model, your business model?
It's pointing straight up. But this
What do you mean it's pointing straight up? What's going on? What does that mean?
We have two cycles, actually. One is civil unrest and international war. The civil unrest tends to show more on what you would call like revolutionary side, and normally they don't particularly take place at the same time. They realign once every 300 and some odd years, and that's what's happening right now. So we have a rise in the civil unrest, and you're seeing it as we're talking about with this polarization in politics. I mean, that will lead to civil war. There's no other way around this. And that's what I mean, that neither side's going to accept whoever wins in 2020. It's pretty much over with. This nonsense about Russia, I mean, it's going after Trump and Russia. I mean, it's absolutely absurd. But, they've done this because, they claim that the Russians hacked the DNC emails and that's why Hillary lost. But there's no allegation that anybody faked the emails or they weren't true.
Yeah.
So instead of saying, I would have agreed with them. Okay, fine. Russia was bad. It made up all this fake news. It's not. Nobody has ever denied a single one of those emails. So all they do is say, oh, well, we would have won if Russia didn't tell the truth on us. So you've now polarized it to the stage that I've seen the polls. I mean, Gallup took a poll that over 70% of Democrats think that Russia's the enemy. And so what do? I mean, you create that kind of sentiment, and that's what leads to war. The economy goes down, then they say, oh, see, this is the Russians. Oh, yeah, okay, go get them. And this is what happens.
And you think the war cycle is tipping towards war? We're going to have one sooner than later.
2032. This is not looking good on a global scale anywhere.
And what's the timing on that?
It's pretty much, we're going into another big phase of it, going into about 2024. But we also have, it's almost like Murphy's Law. Whatever can go wrong is going wrong. The global warming crowd has misled everybody. And we've had like 3 blistering cold winters in a row. And our computer's showing that like ags and commodities are going to go into a bull cycle into 2024 area. And that is, when that picks it up, it's picking up basically because of also weather. You have severe weather coming, and you get cold like this again next year, I mean, forget it. We're going down for at least 5 or 6 more years. And people don't realize that, I mean, it was 70 below zero. It was colder in Chicago than it was in Antarctica. The ground freezes. And, I mean, even John Adams and Jefferson were writing about it. The cold at that stage in the game was so cold, troops were dying there at Valley Forge and during the Revolution. But the ground froze 2 feet deep.
Wow.
You can't grow anything.
I wanted to kind of end with your conference that you're going to have. I mean, you're a global guy. People are interested in your work and conferences all over the world. You have something coming up in May. Is it early May in Italy?
Yeah, we're looking at the first week of going in May 3rd and 4th. This year we're doing it in Rome.
Okay.
So we're looking at that stage in the game that it's for the May elections and everything's going to be there at that stage. So we last year we did one in Singapore. This year we're doing Europe. So.
And you also have a new paper coming out in a few weeks. So basically, you've already out with your summary of new 2018, which is on Armstrong Economics. I will link to the homepage of your site. But you also have a new paper coming out about a look ahead on 2019. Will you describe that a bit?
Yeah, that's our outlook for 2019. What we expect going forward. We've already published the outlook for the Canadians, so that's actually out there online already. With the covers largely the oil in Canadian dollars, etc. The Canadian dollar, euro, U.S. spreads, real estate market, things of that nature. We try to give a good overview for each. We do one for Canada for every year. We do one for the world economy. Primarily focused on the U.S. So that should be out within a couple of weeks or so.
Okay, you don't expect any crash anytime soon in the U.S. That's your basic headline. No crash.
Yeah, no, I mean you have a consolidation, but I mean just look at it. When the normal crash, you have then a rush to bonds. How are you really going to rush to bonds at this stage in the game when government debt, when they're all just a basket case?
Yeah.
It just, cyclically, okay, Great Depression, all right, the stock market crashed, companies were going bust. Then another cycle, it's governments going bust. So it's not always the same thing. This time it's their turn.
Government's going bust.
Just look at Illinois. It's you have governors actually taking ads out in each other's papers. Texas taking an ad in New York and saying, "Hey, come down here. We don't have income taxes."
Yeah.
And then New York retaliating and saying, "Yeah, but we have more infrastructure." So you have governors actually taking shots at each other like this.
Yeah. It's a bad thing. Martin Armstrong, the website is Armstrong Economics. That'll be in the right through for you guys on YouTube. Just click back to USA Watchdog. There'll be the links going back to Armstrong Economics. Armstrong Economics, you have your paper coming up, your 2019 view centering on the U.S. You have your conference in early May in Italy. All that information is on Armstrong Economics. Also, free stuff on there. I read about the Ocasio-Cortez, the fad versus the Trump being not a fad, but more a reflection of what's going on. But a lot of free stuff on your site, too, Armstrong Economics. Martin Armstrong, thank you for joining us today on USAWatchdog.com.
Oh, thank you for inviting me.